this is a different relationship again entirely as well. So we've moved from hierarchy to mutuality to total unity, union, flow, endlessly creative. And I think we might also put responsibility. Someone mentioned it here. We might put this here too. Oh, shoot. If I and God are one, that's a big responsibility. I better take this seriously. So what Raimon Panikkar said is that each of these facets of the divine human experience that Jesus lived are available and accessible to all of us. None of these are for Jesus alone. They're all for all of us to experience. But what he says that I think is crucial here, we might tend to think of this with our Western linear minds as a ladder. We might say, oh, this is the low rung of kindergarten spirituality where I think God is greater than me. And this is adolescent spirituality where I think I'm in God and God is in me. And this is grown-up spirituality where I know I and God are one. But Panikkar says, hold on a minute. This isn't a ladder, it's a circle. The Trinity is a circle, is a dance. And he says, these aren't things we move through in a linear order. These are the facets of the divine human relationship that we move through, not just over the course of a life, but through the course of a day, or even in the course of a single period of prayer. That there are moments where we need nothing more but to cry out to the God who is greater than me, than my little ego. There are moments where we need the relationship of lover and beloved. And then there are moments in pure silence where we just want to be the drop returning to the ocean, back into that total ocean of unity. And he says, it's all of these all the time. It's not one or the other in a hierarchy, that we dance through all of them. And that to have a balanced spiritual life, we in fact need to cultivate all of them. That any one of these on its own can lead to an imbalance. So let's imagine that someone goes out and has a deep unitive experience, but they actually haven't done a lot of work purifying their ego. And suddenly now they're running around with an inflated ego saying, I am God. Well, that's a problem. So what's the medicine for that? God is greater than I. But if we only have God is greater than I, we could devolve into fear-based, legalistic, hierarchical religion. So what's the medicine for that? I'm in God and God is in me. And so he says, when we keep these in motion, we keep dancing through them all, our spirituality stays whole and balanced and human in a way that it isn't when we have just one or the other. So Panikkar believed that the intuition in Jesus' experiences here actually lies at the heart of what we've come to call the mystery of the Holy Trinity. That Jesus' experience was this staggering leap beyond traditional monotheism. Traditional monotheism believing that there's an eternal divide between the creator and the created. That we're sort of eternally separate. It's that God kind of out there in a more deistic model. But for Jesus, it wasn't deism, where it's just the God out there, but it also wasn't pantheism, where it's just we're all one cosmic soup of unity. It was, in fact, an inter-abiding, dynamic, non-dual experience that kept all of these as authentic, valid, and real, all at the same time. So you can't collapse any one into the other. You keep them all in motion. So this is the vision of what non-dual thinkers call not one, not two, both one and two, all at the same time. And Panikkar thought that this was the Trinitarian mandala. And he said that the Trinity isn't a God out there. The Trinity is, in fact, the deep triadic structure of reality itself. And he said that this invites us to enter into dialogue with other faith traditions as people coming from a Christian background in a way that actually can build profound bridges. So we've often thought of the Trinity as a as a club that we beat other religions up with. You know, Christians will say, oh, it's great that Jews and Muslims are monotheists, but we know that God's really a Trinity. And then it becomes a game of one-upmanship. Why my religion's better than yours? And Panikkar says, no, cut that out. Cut that out. And so he talks about what he liked to call finding homeomorphic equivalencies, which is a big word for finding places of experiential resonance between our traditions rather than dogmatic formulas that are comparable. So he said, you can go to your Muslim neighbor and say, well, where's the Trinity in your religion? And they'll go, oh, we don't have that. And now there's no point of connection. But you could instead go to your Muslim neighbor and say, where is your experience of God beyond you? Where is your experience in your tradition of God among us? Where is your experience in your tradition of God within you? And now you're talking. Different traditions can talk about that at the level of experience. Now we then formulate it out in ways that seem to be at loggerheads. But if we can step behind the formulas to the experiences, really authentic dialogue can begin to happen. So that was his hope. And he saw that each of these different religious traditions in the world have angled in on these in different ways and to different degrees. In the West, in the Abrahamic traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, we've mostly focused on the transcendence of God. Even Christians, even though we talk about God incarnate, by and large, we focused on the transcendent God. Now, we might say that indigenous and earth-based and shamanic traditions have really had a sense of God in creation, God in the world, God in us and us in God. And the non-dual traditions of the East, let's say Advaita Vedanta, Zen Buddhism, some of these very non-dual unitive traditions have understood this truth of God profoundly well. And what this understanding of the Trinity says is, hey, we're all right. Everyone's right. Everyone is angling onto one facet of the holy mystery, and no one's wrong. This is all part of one big vision that's actually coherent, that actually holds together. Here's a quotation from Panikkar about the Trinity. And it's very verbose, as he often was, but he says, the whole of reality could be called, in Christian language, Father, Christ, Holy Spirit. The font of reality, the font, the wellspring, the font of reality, reality in its act of being, that is, its becoming, the existing reality, which is the whole Christ, not yet fully realized. So he's saying that there's the ground of being, and then there's the world of becoming. And he says the world of becoming is the unfolding Christ. And then finally he says, and the spirit, the wind, the divine energy that maintains the perichoresis, or the circle dance, in movement. So he sees the Trinity as the dance from the unmanifest ground of all being, the Father, through the dance of manifestation, the Son, and in the Spirit who unites the whole thing in movement. So it's a beautiful vision. And it knocks us out of playing that religious one-upmanship that has plagued so much of Christian and Abrahamic traditions often, but particularly the Christian tradition.